Ancient Warfare Era. This era covers the earliest organized conflict, where armies were formed by early civilizations like Egypt, Greece, and Rome. Weapons were simple, often made of bronze or iron, including swords, spears, and shields. Battles were usually fought in open fields, and formations like the Greek phalanx played a crucial role in maintaining discipline. For example, during the Persian Wars, Greek city-states used tight formations to defeat larger forces. War in this time was often about survival, resources, and basic territorial control. Leadership and courage on the battlefield mattered more than technology. These early conflicts laid the foundation for future military organization and tactics. Even today, some basic principles like formation and discipline trace back to this era. Classical Warfare Era. This period saw more structured and disciplined armies, especially with empires like Rome reaching their peak. Soldiers were highly trained and tactics became more refined, with organized legions and coordinated battlefield movements. Engineering also became important, with the Romans building roads, bridges, and fortifications to support their campaigns. For example, Julius Caesar's campaigns in Gaul showed how planning and mobility could defeat larger tribal forces. War in this time was not just about fighting, but also about controlling and managing vast territories. Armies became permanent institutions rather than temporary groups. Communication and command systems improved significantly. This era shaped how empires expanded and maintained power over long distances. Medieval Warfare Era. This era introduced heavily armored knights, castles, and long sieges that could last for months or even years. Combat often revolved around feudal systems, where lords raised armies from their lands in exchange for loyalty. Weapons like swords, bows, and crossbows were common, while castles served as both homes and defensive structures. For example, the Hundred Years' War between England and France featured famous battles like Agincourt, where longbows played a decisive role. Religion also influenced many conflicts, including the Crusades in the Middle East. Warfare was slower and often focused on controlling land piece by piece. Defenses were strong, making direct attacks costly and difficult. This era emphasized endurance, loyalty, and strategic positioning. Gunpowder Warfare Era. The introduction of gunpowder completely changed the nature of war, making traditional armor and castle walls less effective. Cannons were used to break down fortifications, while muskets replaced many handheld weapons. Battles became louder, more chaotic, and far more destructive than before. For example, the fall of Constantinople in 1453 showed how powerful cannons could destroy even the strongest city walls. Armies had to adapt quickly to these new technologies or risk defeat. Training shifted toward handling firearms and coordinating volleys of fire. Fortifications were redesigned into star-shaped forts to resist cannon attacks. This era marked the clear transition from medieval to modern warfare. Early Modern Warfare Era. Armies became more professional and were controlled directly by centralized governments rather than feudal lords. Uniforms, drills, and strict discipline became standard, allowing soldiers to fight in organized lines. Muskets and artillery dominated the battlefield, and battles were carefully planned in advance. For example, the Napoleonic Wars showed how speed, organization, and leadership could overwhelm opponents. Nations began to invest heavily in their military forces as symbols of power. Warfare became more about national interest than personal loyalty. Supply lines and logistics started playing a critical role in success. This era helped shape the modern concept of national armies. Industrial Warfare Era. The rise of industry brought mass production of weapons and rapid technological advancement that changed warfare completely. Railways allowed armies to move quickly across large distances, while telegraphs improved communication between commanders. Weapons became more deadly, including machine guns and early explosives. For example, the American Civil War showed how industrial capacity could influence the outcome of battles. This era marked the clear transition from medieval to modern warfare. World War era. This period includes the two global conflicts that involved countries from nearly every part of the world. Warfare reached an unprecedented scale, with trench warfare, tanks, aircraft, and chemical weapons being introduced. Soldiers faced harsh conditions, especially in World War I trenches, where progress was slow and deadly. For example, World War II saw massive battles like Stalingrad and the use of atomic bombs in Japan. Civilians were deeply affected, with cities being bombed and economies focused entirely on war efforts. Technology advanced rapidly due to urgent wartime needs. Alliances and global politics became more complex. This era reshaped borders and international relations for decades to come. Cold War era. Instead of direct large-scale battles between major powers, this era was defined by tension, rivalry, and the constant threat of nuclear war. The United States and the Soviet Union built massive arsenals but avoided direct conflict. Instead, they competed through proxy wars in places like Korea and Vietnam. For example, the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world dangerously close to nuclear war. Espionage and intelligence gathering became key elements of conflict. Technological competition led to the space race and nuclear advancements. Fear played a major role in maintaining a fragile balance. This era showed how war could exist without direct confrontation. Modern warfare era. This era is marked by advanced technology, precision weapons, and highly trained professional forces. Drones, satellite systems, and cyber tools now play a major role in how conflicts are fought. Battles are often faster and more targeted, focusing on specific objectives rather than large-scale destruction. For example, recent conflicts in the Middle East have used drone strikes and real-time intelligence. Armies rely heavily on data and communication systems. The goal is often to minimize casualties while achieving strategic goals. Warfare has become more complex and less visible to the public. This era reflects the influence of technology on every aspect of conflict. Hybrid warfare era. This emerging blend blends traditional combat with cyber attacks, misinformation, and economic pressure. It often involves both state and non-state actors, making conflicts harder to define. Instead of clear battlefields, fights can happen online, in media, or through political influence. For example, cyber attacks on infrastructure and misinformation campaigns during conflicts have become increasingly common. Military action is combined with psychological and digital strategies. This makes it difficult to identify where a war begins or ends. Governments now must defend not just borders, but also information systems. This era shows how warfare continues to evolve alongside modern society.